He should be 200 pounds, and he's 800 pounds. So he weighs 4 times as much as he should weigh.
At 20 years old, Caleb Turley weighed over 800 pounds. His story is one of extreme obesity, compounded by medical and emotional challenges. Confined to his home and struggling with basic daily tasks, Caleb faced life-threatening obstacles.
I was having excruciating pain in my legs, and it was hurting like so badly, like it would hurt when I walked. And we went in to get it checked, and they found out that I had Bum's disease.
The 6,000-pound Diaries follows him as he seeks guidance from Dr. Nowzaradan, fighting to reclaim his health, independence, and hope for the future. This is more than weight loss. It's a journey of survival. The weight of a young life. You know, sometimes you hear a story that just hits differently. Caleb's story? Yeah, it's one of those. Imagine being only 20 years old and already weighing over 800 pounds. Crazy, right? But this isn't just numbers on a scale. It's his entire life, his health, his freedom. And trust me, when you see how he got here, you'll understand why he needed help before it was too late. Right now, Caleb's life isn't like most 20-year-olds you know. There's no late-night parties, no hanging out with friends, no spontaneous trips. His world is confined to his home. And even simple things that most people take for granted, like standing up, walking a few steps, or even taking a shower alone, are almost impossible. Every movement comes with effort, pain, and sometimes fear. It's hard to picture, but this is reality for him. Every pound he carries makes life heavier, literally and emotionally. And here's the thing, it's not just about his weight. Caleb's story is about what comes with it, the health risks, the isolation, the emotional toll. At 800 pounds, every organ in his body is under pressure. His heart works overtime, his joints ache constantly, and even breathing can be a struggle. On top of that, there's the mental weight, the stress, the grief, and the guilt that comes from knowing your life has been shaped by forces that feel bigger than you. For Caleb, that includes family losses he's still trying to process, and years of habits formed in response to pain. This is exactly why he turned to the 6,000-pound Diaries. He needed someone who could help him face the impossible. Not just a diet or a quick fix, but a real plan that could change his life. Enter Dr. Nowzaradan, a surgeon known for helping people who have reached extreme levels of obesity. For Caleb, this was a lifeline, a chance to finally fight back against something that had controlled him for years. But before he could even think about weight loss surgery or medical interventions, he had to confront the reality of his life. Every day, Caleb faces a battle between the body he's trapped in and the life he dreams of living. It's not easy. It's messy, emotional, and sometimes frightening. But it's real, and it's happening right now. As we follow his journey, it's impossible not to feel a mix of concern, empathy, and even hope. Because despite the scale, despite the struggles, Caleb has one thing that can't be measured in pounds: the determination to try. And that determination, messy, human, stubborn, is what makes his story worth telling. By the end of this section, one thing is clear. Caleb isn't just fighting the scale. He's fighting for his life, for his freedom, and for the chance to be more than a number. And if you think about it, isn't that something everyone can relate to in some way? So how did a young man barely out of his teens end up weighing over 800 pounds? To answer that, we need to go back to where it all started. Caleb's life before the show. So let's rewind a bit. Caleb didn't start out at 800 pounds. Far from it. Like many kids, he was active, curious, and had dreams that were normal for a young boy. He even played football in middle school, proving that movement and energy were once part of his daily life. But somewhere along the way, things started to change. By the time he was in 5th grade, Caleb was already noticing changes in his body. His weight was creeping up, and what might have been small concerns for some kids became bigger obstacles for him. But it wasn't just a matter of diet or exercise. It was a combination of medical issues and emotional challenges that made weight gain almost inevitable. One major factor was a condition called Blount's disease, which affects the growth of the shin bone and can make walking painful or difficult. For Caleb, it meant being active was no longer simple or easy. Every step could be uncomfortable. Every run or game, a reminder that his body wasn't cooperating. And as movement became harder, weight gain followed, slowly at first, then faster, compounding over time. But Caleb's story isn't only about physical challenges. Life threw some heavy emotional punches too. He lost family members he loved, and those losses left scars that no diet or exercise could erase. For many people, grief triggers temporary struggles. For Caleb, it shaped his relationship with food. Eating became more than just nourishment. It became comfort, a way to cope with sadness, stress, and frustration. Over the years, those habits solidified into patterns that were nearly impossible to break without help. School and social life weren't easy either. Being overweight as a kid can bring teasing, isolation, and a constant sense of being different. Caleb knew what it felt like to sit on the sidelines, to watch peers live lives that seemed unattainable. And every extra pound made it harder to join in, harder to feel like he belonged. That combination of physical limitation and emotional struggle built on itself, creating a cycle that few could understand, except for him. By the time Caleb reached late adolescence, his weight had skyrocketed. He was facing not only the consequences of years of limited mobility and emotional eating, but also the very real threat of serious health complications. His heart, his joints, and even basic day-to-day activities were under tremendous strain. And yet, in the midst of all that, he still had a spark, a desire to change, to reclaim the life he had lost. That spark is what eventually led him to seek help on the 6,000-pound Diaries. Looking back, it's clear that Caleb's journey didn't start with the show. It started long before, in a childhood marked by both struggle and resilience. Understanding those early years is key to seeing not just the weight he carried, but the life he fought to regain. From the struggles of his early life to the heavy reality of today, everything had led to one critical step: meeting Dr. Now and facing the challenge head-on. Caleb meets Dr. Now. After everything Caleb had been through, the childhood struggles, the medical issues, the emotional weight, he made a choice. A choice to take a step that he hadn't been able to take before, to ask for help. And not just any help, but the kind that could actually change his life. That's how he ended up on the 6,000-pound Diaries, standing at the doorstep of Dr. Nowzaradan's office, ready to face a challenge bigger than anything he had done before. Walking into that clinic was probably one of the scariest moments in Caleb's life. Imagine it, a young man, 800 pounds, facing a doctor known for being honest, blunt, and relentless when it comes to obesity. Dr. Now doesn't sugarcoat anything. He's there to tell you the hard truth. And for Caleb, that truth hit immediately. The doctor assessed his weight, his medical condition, and the very real risks of staying the way he was. Caleb could see it in Dr. Now's eyes. This wasn't just about a number on a scale. It was about his survival. But it wasn't all fear and pressure. There was hope too. For the first time, Caleb had a plan. Dr. Now laid out a strict path. A 1,200-calorie diet, medical supervision, and lifestyle changes designed to get his body ready for surgery. It wasn't a magic solution. It was discipline, consistency, and courage rolled into one. And Caleb, for all his struggles, was ready to try. The first days weren't easy. Nothing about changing a life at Caleb's scale is easy. Simple movements were exhausting. Sticking to the diet was challenging. And emotionally, he was confronting years of habits that had kept him in this situation. Every craving, every moment of doubt tested him. But there were also small victories. Standing a little longer, walking a few steps, losing those first pounds. Each of these moments built momentum, proving to Caleb that change was possible. And then there was the emotional side of it. Caleb wasn't just shedding pounds. He was starting to shed the weight of his past. Grief, guilt, and frustration didn't disappear overnight, but being on the show forced him to confront them. In counseling sessions and in moments alone, he reflected on how far he had come and how much further he could go. For Caleb, this was a turning point, the moment when the maybe someday finally became right now. The cameras captured it all, the fear, the struggle, the triumphs, and the setbacks. But behind the lens, the real story was Caleb taking control of his life, step by step, under the guidance of Dr. Now. It was a journey that would test him physically and emotionally, but also one that offered a glimpse of hope. Hope that he could reclaim the life he had lost to extreme obesity. By the end of those first few weeks, one thing was clear. Caleb wasn't just a participant on a reality show. He was a young man taking his first real steps toward survival, toward independence, and toward a future that had once seemed impossible. And this was only the beginning. Caleb had begun physically transforming. Now it was time to face his inner struggles. The mind behind the transformation. By now, Caleb had started to see some changes on the scale. But the real transformation wasn't happening there. It was happening in his mind. For years, he carried more than just physical weight. Grief, guilt, frustration, and old habits were all part of the package. And now, for the first time, he was forced to confront them head-on. It wasn't easy. Every time Caleb followed the strict diet, every time he resisted a craving, he was battling years of emotional coping mechanisms. Eating had been his comfort, his escape, his way of dealing with pain. And suddenly that safety net was gone. He had to find a new way to cope. And that's where the emotional struggle came in. There were days that tested him more than the numbers ever could. Simple setbacks felt monumental. Gaining a pound back, struggling to walk further than the day before, or just having a moment of doubt. Those were the days that made him question whether he could really do this. But through counseling, guidance from Dr. Now, and his own stubborn determination, Caleb began to recognize patterns, the triggers, the emotional highs and lows, the moments when he would have turned to food before. Awareness became the first step toward change. And then came the breakthroughs, the moments that made all the struggle worthwhile. The first time Caleb could stand longer without pain. The first time he walked a distance that would have seemed impossible weeks earlier. These weren't just physical milestones, they were emotional victories. Proof that he could regain control over his life. With each success, confidence grew, and the fear of failure started to shrink. Family and relationships played a role too. The show highlighted how past grief and loss had shaped his habits, but it also showed that connecting with loved ones could be part of healing. Caleb began to realize that his journey wasn't just about losing pounds, it was about reclaiming a life he had been denied for too long. Every small victory reinforced that hope, building momentum for the next challenge. By the time this stage of his journey was well underway, it was clear that Caleb was more than just a number on a scale. He was a young man learning to cope, to forgive himself, and to celebrate progress, no matter how small. The physical transformation was visible, but the emotional growth was even more profound. Caleb was learning resilience, self-awareness, and patience, all while navigating one of the most difficult periods of his life. The emotional journey wasn't linear. There were setbacks, tears, and moments of doubt. But through it all, Caleb's determination and evolving mindset became the driving force behind his transformation. This was the stage where real change happened, the place where his story became about more than weight loss. It became about reclaiming control, rebuilding confidence, and discovering that strength isn't just measured in pounds, but in courage gained. All the emotional battles and breakthroughs led to one critical moment: seeing the results of his journey. Lessons learned, and a new beginning. After months of struggle, discipline, and emotional battles, Caleb reached a turning point. From weighing over 800 pounds, he had shed hundreds of pounds, bringing his weight down to around 542. It wasn't just the numbers that mattered. It was the freedom, the confidence, and the hope he gained along the way. Every step he could take without pain, every meal he could enjoy without guilt, and every moment he felt in control of his life was proof of the hard work he had put in. Caleb's journey showed that transformation is never just physical. The emotional growth, learning to cope with grief, break old habits, and face fears, was equally important. He learned resilience, patience, and self-awareness, realizing that weight loss isn't about perfection, but progress. For viewers, Caleb's story is a reminder of the strength people can find when they face challenges head-on. It's about hope, determination, and the courage to seek help when life feels overwhelming. While the road isn't over for him, he still has a lifetime of maintaining change ahead. The progress he made proves that even the most extreme obstacles can be overcome with dedication and support. In the end, Caleb's story isn't just about pounds lost. It's about reclaiming a life, embracing growth, and discovering that no matter how heavy the burden, the first step toward change is always possible. Caleb's journey isn't perfect, but it's real. And it shows us that change starts with one honest moment and the courage to keep going. What part of his story inspired you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your opinion. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button so you don't miss more stories like Caleb's. Every small step counts, just like Caleb showed us. And your support helps this community grow.